They say every painting has a soul, but what if one was alive? That's what this artist is about to find out when he moves into an old apartment building. It was cheap, a little creepy, but that's just how Thomas liked it. He moved in, unpacked his stuff, hung up some pictures, then he noticed something strange. One of the walls had a big brown spot. It was covered by a drop cloth, like the previous tenant tried to hide it or paint over it. But why? What was behind there? Thomas didn't know, but he was about to find out. He pulled the drop cloth off the wall and underneath was a painting. It wasn't anything special, just a simple black and white picture of a man wearing a top hat. But something about it seemed familiar. Maybe it was the way the guy was smiling, or maybe it was those piercing blue eyes. Either way, Thomas felt uneasy, but he couldn't put his finger on it, so he left it alone. The next day he came back to it, tried to get a closer look, but when he stepped into the room, the painting was gone. No, it wasn't. There it was on the wall. Only now the man was standing, before he was sitting down. But Thomas must have imagined it. These things happen when you move into an old apartment. You see things that weren't there before. He got closer, squinted. Those eyes looked too real, like they were following him around the room. And then Thomas noticed something even stranger. The man's posture was different than yesterday. He was leaning to the side. And as Thomas watched, the man turned his head and stared directly at him. This was freaky. Was the painting cursed? Had the previous tenant lost their mind? Had they seen something in the apartment that drove them insane? Thomas wasn't sure, but he wanted to find out. He needed answers, so he did the only thing he could think of. He knocked on his neighbor's door. The old woman who lived across the hall answered. She looked confused. Hi, Thomas said. I just moved in. I wanted to ask you, have you seen that painting on my wall? What painting? She asked. The one in my living room, he replied. She shook her head slowly. I don't see any painting, she said. Or maybe I do, but I can't recall. Her eyes seemed vacant. Did she know more than she was letting on? Was that why she moved out? Was this apartment haunted? Thomas couldn't get answers from his neighbors, so he tried a different approach. He went back home, poured some gasoline on the painting, and lit it on fire. As he watched, the flames spread, consumed the canvas. It looked like it was going to burn just fine, but then something happened. In the blink of an eye, the fire was gone. He stared at the painting, dumbfounded. There was no damage, no scorch marks, nothing. It was like nothing ever happened. But then he noticed the man was smiling wider than before. This wasn't normal. Something was definitely wrong with this painting. But what? Why was it in his apartment? And where did the previous tenant go? All these questions ran through Thomas's mind, but he didn't have much time to think about them. That night, he woke up in his bed. He could feel its springs digging into his back. He tried to turn over, but it was no use. The mattress was lumpy and uncomfortable. Grumbling to himself, he got out of bed. He walked over to the window and looked out, but that's when he noticed something strange. He was looking out from inside the painting. Thomas stared at the wall in disbelief. The painting was gone. In its place was a dark oval, like the negative space left behind after removing a picture. He reached out, touched it. It was cold, hard, and wet. Thomas stumbled back, tripped over his rug and landed face first on the floor. As he looked back at the wall, he felt something brush against his fingers. He gasped, pulled away. Whatever it was alive. A second later he heard a crash from inside the wall. Something heavy fell to the floor. Then silence. What was happening? Why did the painting take him? Was this the curse everyone warned him about? Afraid, Thomas ran out of the apartment. He sprinted down the hallway, raced up the stairs, and burst through the front door. Outside he was met by a police car. The officers inside were talking to a tow truck driver. They must have come for the car he left in the street. Embarrassed, Thomas tried to explain, but the officers cut him off. Sorry buddy, but we need to tow your car. It's blocking traffic, one of them said. Yeah, sorry, he replied. It's just, I just moved in today. I didn't realize. Sure, the officer said suspiciously, but why didn't you answer the phone? We tried calling you. What phone? He asked. The officer shook his head. Never mind, just sign here and be on your way. He signed the papers, paid the fee, and watched as they towed his car away. Then he did something he hadn't planned on doing. He turned around and walked back inside. As he stepped through the door, he felt a sense of dread wash over him. He knew whatever was in that apartment would be waiting for him. The question was, what would it do? Thomas took a deep breath, walked slowly toward the wall. There it was. The oval shape was still there, but now it was pulsing, moving, breathing. Fear coursed through him, but curiosity overpowered it. He reached out, placed his hand on the spot where the painting used to be, and that's when he felt it. A warm, tingling sensation spread through his arm, up his neck, into his brain. His vision blurred. He swayed, almost fell to the ground. When he opened his eyes again, he was no longer looking at the wall. Instead, he was staring out from the other side of the canvas. Through the window, he could see the street below. Cars whizzed by. People hurried along the sidewalk, but something was missing. His apartment building wasn't there. Thomas was in a new place. A chill wind swept across the barren landscape, sending a shiver down his spine. In the distance he saw a dark forest. Its gnarled branches clawed at the sky, but Thomas didn't want to go that way. He turned around and walked the other direction until he came across a dirt road. He followed it, hoping it would lead him back to civilization, but it didn't. Instead, it led him to a clearing, and in the center of the clearing stood his apartment building. But it didn't look the same. The windows were boarded up. Vines crawled up the side of the building, choking it, consuming it. But one window was open. Light streamed out from inside. Curious, Thomas walked toward it. He had to see what was going on. As he approached, he heard voices. He couldn't make out what they were saying, but he could hear laughter singing. It sounded like a party. Thomas hesitated. Should he knock on the door? What if someone answered? Would he recognize them? Would they recognize him? He wasn't sure, but he wanted to find out. Taking a deep breath, he raised his hand, knocked on the door. A moment later, it creaked open. Standing in the doorway was a young woman. She smiled at him, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was a predatory one. Her eyes gleamed with excitement. "Who's there?" she asked. I live here," he stammered. I just moved in." "Oh, really?" she purred. "Well then why don't you come in and let me show you around?" Before Thomas could respond, she grabbed his hand and pulled him inside. He stumbled forward, caught a glimpse of the room behind her. It was dark, dusty, filled with strange symbols and pentagrams drawn on the floor. "Where am I?" he whispered. "Why don't you take a look around?" she replied, "and you'll see." Then she disappeared into the shadows. Thomas stood there, frozen. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know where he was or how he got there. But one thing was clear. He wasn't in Kansas anymore. That's when he noticed the painting on the wall behind him. It was the same one from his apartment, only now it was different. The man was smiling wider than before, and in his eyes Thomas saw his own reflection. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. The woman stepped out of the darkness and smiled. "Welcome to your new home," she said. Then Thomas woke up. He could feel the springs digging into his back. He could hear birds chirping outside. Had it been a dream? Was he still in his apartment? Sitting up, he looked around. He was in a strange room. There were boxes everywhere, stacks of paintings leaning against the walls. He didn't recognize the place. Where was he? How did he get here? Then he saw the painting on the wall. It was the same one from his apartment. The man in the painting was smiling wider than ever, and in his eyes, Thomas saw his own reflection.